Hello. Oh, hi, Sarah. Yeah, I just got back from the world up above. Just in time, too, for the children's corner.
When I'm sitting around with my homework all done and there's nothing to do, I call all of my friends, they don't answer the phone. Where have they gone to? Where do you go?
Elephants, they're huge. They're smart. They're social.
Pardon me, Sheriff.
What? Oh, hello there, and welcome to the town of the Children's Corner, located in the world of the magical couch. I'm Sheriff Stephen J., the Sheriff of Slouch County, and I was talking to Pinky here about elephants. If you don't mind, could you kind of move over here for me? It's kind of awkward going back. Yeah, that. That's much better. Like I was saying, Pinky the second here and we were talking about elephants. And we're talking about elephants because a while back, I was in the world up above looking for slouches that had climbed up the rope ladder and escaped from our world of the magical couch. And I came across a place. And this place was a big barn and it had 2 elephants in it. It was very, very amazing. These were circus elephants. And they were retired and living at this place, and they were being taken care of by a veterinarian. The veterinarian's Jim Larita. And Jim used to work in the circus years and years before he was a veterinarian, and he worked with these same elephants. So now they're retired, and they have some injuries from working all those years in the circus, and now Jim takes care of them. He was a very interesting fellow. I don't know. I don't get it. What's with the elephants?
Well, these elephants are old friends of mine. These are friends that I met a long time ago when my brother and I used to juggle on a circus. And it wasn't all you do to juggle, just do that twice a day. So they said, well, why don't you go work with the elephants? And so I met Rosie and Opal, and I started working with them when I was taller than them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time. How many years is that?
Well, boy, over 30 years ago I met them when I was a young boy. I was 17 years old, and I went away to join the circus. And I worked with these 2 elephants. And I never forgot them. All throughout my life, I said, I want to do something special for those 2 elephants.
Now, there are some people who have preconceived notions or ideas about elephants that aren't necessarily true. So today, Pinky and I are going to clear up some of those ideas you might have about elephants, and so you have the right information. Now, some people think that elephants are taken from the wild to be used in circuses or whatever. Let me ask you this, Pinky. Are elephants taken from the wild to be used in the circus?
False.
False! That is absolutely correct. Elephants have not been imported from Southeast Asia in many, many years. That's because an international treaty was signed and it left endangered species in their native lands. Nowadays, most elephants come from other animal parks, and circuses in North America, and increasingly from farms owned by circuses where they have babies in captivity. And now here's another one. See if you know this one, Pinky. Elephants live as long as humans. True or false?
True.
True. Absolutely true. In the wild, elephants are lucky if they live 40 to 50 years. But in captivity, they can actually live 50 to 60 years. And I learned that from the last time I was up in the world up above visiting them.
How long ago was that, Sheriff?
Oh, just recently. I was up there to visit Jim Larita and the elephants, and there was a young man up there. His name was Tyler. And he was giving a lecture to a whole bunch of people about the elephants, Rosie and Opal.
Problems they've developed over the years. Well, one of the more noticeable problems that they've developed is that Rosie has a problem with her trunk. She has something called a paralysis of her trunk, which means she can't use all of the muscles in it. And you can see she sort of hangs it limply there. She can swing it around, but she can't lift it properly. And that affects her ability to drink. So while she can suck the water up into her trunk just fine, she has no way of getting her trunk up into her mouth. And so we have to give her water just right through the hose. And that hose is pumping out about 6 gallons a minute, and that way she's able to still get all the water she needs. Because if we tried to force her to drink like Opal does, she'd end up pretty dehydrated, especially on a hot day like today. That's sort of the kind of adaptation we've had to do here, and we have seen a tremendous improvement in her ability to use that trunk. When we first brought her up here, she could only throw it up to about a foot from her mouth, and she can now get her trunk almost entirely to her mouth and just to toss the food up to last a little bit. And so she can eat fine now. She's a little bit slower than the way Opal eats, but she's able to get almost all of her food in there. You guys can see that patch on her trunk, that dark colored patch. Well, that's more or less where the nerve damage in her trunk is. However, that dark spot is not directly a consequence of that nerve damage, though it is indirectly related. That dark spot is a little bit of SPF 60 no-ad sunblock. These elephants are both covered in dust, and they do that to keep themselves from getting sunburned. But Rosie can't get that dust onto her trunk, and so since she can't get the natural sunscreen on, we have to help her out with a little bit of artificial sunscreen.
I got another one for you. Let's see if you know this one. Elephants have thick skin. True or false?
I've seen pictures, so I'll say true.
True. That's absolutely correct. Yes, elephants do have thick skin, and that's why they call an elephant a pachyderm.
What's a pachyderm?
Well, a pachyderm is an animal with thick skin. It comes from the Greek word pachydermos, and pachydermos means thick skin. But even though they have thick skin, it's very sensitive. They can feel a fly that lands on its back.
You can see Opal clearly wasn't so thirsty and instead was more interested in playing with the water. And this is one of the ways she stays cool, especially on a hot day like today. How many of you guys are going to be jumping in a pool or a lake or the ocean today, right? It's the perfect way to stay cool. This is how an elephant does it. Because these are Asian elephants and not African elephants. And so this is much more of the climate they're adjusted to. They're not used to the hot savannas of Africa, the tropical and subtropical climate. So this is about as warm as they can be comfortable in. In fact, a recent study out of Thailand showed that they start suffering from heat stress at temperatures as low as 75 degrees. So we have to take all sorts of precautions to make sure that they stay cool. Now, can any of you guys guess how they might keep from overheating?
Mud.
Mud? Yep. They cover themselves in mud. A happy elephant is a dirty elephant, I say. How else do you think they stay cool? They cover themselves in water, right? Now, do you guys see how rough their skin is? How there are all these seemingly cracks in it where it folds in? Those actually help them stay cool. See, the water gets stuck in those cracks, and the longer the water's there for, the longer it's helping keep them cool. And so they've developed that patterning in their skin as a way of staying cool for longer. That way she doesn't have to throw water on herself all day, just a few times. How about their ears? Do you guys think they do anything with their ears to stay cool? They'll flap them, yep. What else? Do you think there's anything else they can do with their ears?
Keep bugs away.
They'll keep bugs away, yeah. And they can also use them as giant radiators. See, those ears are full of capillaries and other blood vessels, and you can actually see them right now. And those blood vessels can have the level of blood being pushed to them increased. And they'll do that whenever it gets hot. And all of that extra surface area allows them to radiate heat outward. So all that hot blood comes in contact with the air and that cools it down, and then gets pumped back into the body where it cools down everything else. And so they actually stay cool that way, just like a lot of those desert animals will do. You see like the jackrabbits with the really big ears. It's the same thing. It's to help them cool down.
All this talk about elephants, I'm getting a mite hungry. I can hear my stomach growling.
Oh yeah, welcome to my world.
Well, sure. I brought ingredients to cook up a surprise for you.
Really, you're gonna cook up a surprise? That's very nice of you, Pinky. You gonna make peanut butter sandwiches like you did the last time you visited me when we were talking about elephants?
Oh no, I've matured since then. I've taken my cooking skills to the next level. This lunch is sweet.
Sweet. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. So, why don't you go over to the preparation table and cook it on up, and while you do that, I'll tell you what Tyler had to say about Rosie and Opal's therapy that they're going through, and also about elephants' teeth.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Now this right here is one of our treatments we do. This is called target training. And this back in their circus days, this was used to teach them new tricks. However, what we're using it for is physical therapy. They're basically just doing stretches right now. And what you can see there is one of the other injuries we're dealing with. They both have nerve damage to their front left leg. It's damage to the nerve running over their shoulder blades, which is called suprascapular nerve damage. And it prevents them from being able to bend that joint properly. So when she walks, you can see her swing the leg out. and that prevents her from being able to walk normally, and it limits her mobility. And so a lot of our treatments here are focused on trying to improve her ability to use that joint. And that goes for both of them because they do both have similar injuries there. Now we have a wide range of therapies that we use for them. We do hydrotherapy on them. We do therapeutic ultrasound. We have a therapy called shortwave diathermy, where we actually heat up their joints from the inside out using radio waves. And we also do several times every week acupuncture on them. And that's something that we've started to see some results with. And that's a technique that's actually been used in elephants for more than 2,500 years.
How big are the needles you have to use?
They're the equine needles, so they're about this long. Yep. And they'll all sort of sit still while Jim puts them right in. So they both get them in their legs, and Rosie gets them in her trunk. Yep. It took a little while to get her comfortable with that, but now she'll let him do it. If any of us were to try and do it, though, I don't think it would end quite so well. Now, what do you guys see when Opal lifts her trunk up? So you see a tooth there, right? And that tooth, it looks kind of like it's where a tusk should be, right? But that's actually not a tusk. It's something called a tush. And the reason she has a tush instead of a tusk is because she is an Asian female elephant. You mentioned that one of the differences between the two was the ears. Well, here's another difference. The Asian elephants, only the males have the big tusks. For the African elephant, the male and female both have those big tusks. And so that's another way you can tell the difference between them. Yep. How about any other ways? Do you guys know any other differences between the two species?
These seem smaller than...
These are tiny, right? Itty bitty elephants, only 8,000 pounds each.
Oh my God.
A big African bull elephant can easily weigh 20,000 pounds and can be up to 13 feet tall. Do you see that finger on the end of her trunk that she's using to pick things up, almost like an opposable digit? She only has one finger there because she's an Asian elephant, and an African elephant actually has two, one on each side of the trunk, and they use that to actually pinch things. She's probably preparing that to scratch herself with because she loves to use those to scratch. Yep. And she's trying to get it just right for her needs. And she'll also eat those occasionally.
Not flossing.
Not flossing. In fact, there's not much use for flossing in an elephant because they do have teeth, but the way they're positioned, there's nothing really to floss because they only have 4 of them. So this right here is what an Asian elephant's tooth looks like. In fact, this is a real Asian elephant's tooth. This one is a bottom left molar. So while those tusks can be considered equivalent to our incisors, their main teeth, their grinding surfaces, are equivalent to our molars. However, because they only have one in each portion of their jaw, there's nothing really to floss in between, so no need for that. You can see this grinding surface here is pretty worn out. Now, they get 6 sets of teeth during their life, and each time they get a new one, instead of erupting out from the jaw like ours do, it actually slides forward like that, and then the old one falls off. Now, this right here is an African elephant's tooth. This is not a real one, this is just a cast. And you can see it's got a very different grinding surface, and that's because they eat very different food, and they need to be able to chew up much tougher food, so it's a much deeper set of grooves there. Now, this is actually what the African elephant is named for. It's Loxodonta africana. So that word Loxodonta actually means diamond-toothed, and right here you can see those diamond patterns. This right here is another one of our therapies, although this one is less physical and more mental. Here we're doing something called object differentiation and clicker training. You guys hear that click each time they get a treat? Well, we're just using the click to augment the positive reinforcement of the treat. You use the same kind of technique when you're trying to train a dog or really any other animal. Now, what we're actually trying to get them to do is to differentiate between different objects based on verbal commands. So we'll put out different objects, instruct them to touch a specific one, and they'll touch only that one.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good over there, Pinky. Hey, I got another question for you. Are elephants social?
False.
It's true. They live in groups called herds, and they also have a very unique way of communicating with each other.
They communicate using what's called the infrasound range. So that sound that's below our range of hearing in terms of frequency. However, their ears are good enough that they can actually pick up those noises. And what's been discovered recently is that it's not a rudimentary language like what a dog has, but it's actually a complex language with its own vocabulary and grammatical structure to it. And so, they actually can tell each other these complex ideas and communicate these complex notions and abstract thoughts that are required for the formation of a true society. And there's a lot of effort being done to try and translate this language. And they've already just made tremendous progress. They know, for instance, what the elephant word for stinging bee is. However, their communications are not limited to just the verbal. They have a few other ways of talking to each other as well. Now this right here is an elephant's foot. Now you can see their stance is not like ours. It's something called a digitigrade stance, where they're up on their toes, whereas we have what's called a plantigrade stance, on the balls of our feet. Now, what that means is that they've got this big hollow area here that has a fatty pad in it. And that fatty pad serves as something called a bioacoustic lipid. And a bioacoustic lipid is basically a fancy name for a fat that helps you hear. But by having it in their feet, it actually lets the elephants use their feet as extra ears. And so they can hear vibrations made by another elephant up to 15 miles away. And they can tell whether the vibration was meant to indicate danger or good food, and they'll only respond to it if it was from an elephant that they know and trust, which means that what seems like a very rudimentary method of communication actually has a tremendous amount of depth to it. Now, this right here is one of their medications. There are a few different things in there. Actually, one ingredient is beet pulp, and that's for their digestive system. But there are a few other things in there as well, including chondroitin and glucosamine. Now, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with it, but chondroitin and glucosamine are in a lot of dog foods. They're given to racehorses, and a lot of people actually take glucosamine now for their joints because it helps prevent and slow the progression of arthritis. However, these are the only 2 elephants taking chondroitin and glucosamine at the moment. But we are very happy to be able to have them on it because it's very good for their joints, and it'll help hopefully keep these guys walking around for a whole while longer. Now this is one of Opal's favorite summertime snacks. It's a watermelon. And while that would make a good snack for a few of us to share, for her it barely makes a good bite. Now you can see Rosie is getting a few carrots over there, and the reason we're doing that is because she can't eat watermelon. It gives her a stomach ache, and we don't want that. But if we gave her nothing, she'd get jealous and she might even try and take the watermelon from Opal. So by giving Rosie her own snack, a bunch of the carrots that she likes, we keep her happy. Now you guys saw the way Opal was able to pick up that watermelon with her trunk and just crush it, right?
Yes.
The human body has only 680 muscles in it. Now, how many muscles do you guys think are in that trunk? The actual answer is 150,000. It's an entirely muscular structure. It's called a muscular hydrostat. And so there's muscles running down the length of it, and also muscles wrapping around it helically. And that allows her to manipulate it in all those different patterns you can see. Now right now what they're doing is they're soaking their feet in tubs of Epsom salts and water, and we do that to try and prevent infections, because an elephant's feet are very vulnerable to all sorts of problems, especially in captivity, where they can get a lot of these infections due to their feet not wearing down the way they would normally. And so by soaking their feet in Epsom salts and water a few times a day, and also occasionally using iodine or hydrogen peroxide and various other astringent agents and antibacterial agents, we are able to try and ensure that their feet remain as healthy as possible. Now you can see right here she's demonstrating just how dexterous that trunk is, and you can see the way she uses the tip of that finger as an opposable digit. Now it's very sensitive there. The nerves are almost identical to what are called the mystacial nerves of a mouse, the whisker nerves. And those are extremely sensitive, and it allows them to pick up very small objects, as small as a dime even, and feel their way around to identify where something good to eat is. Now that trunk, however, don't think of it as something dainty, even though it can pick up all these tiny little things, because it can also pick up a 600-pound log and throw it a good distance. The tip of their trunk isn't the only part of their body that they're sensitive. I mentioned earlier that their entire skin is very sensitive. However, they do have some disadvantages compared to us when it comes to feeling things. They're so large that there's a significant time delay between when something lands on them and when they'll feel it. And so you'll often see a bug land on them, and instead of them reacting immediately, it'll be about a second and a half before they actually respond and will try swatting at it, because it takes so long for those signals to be passed back and forth along those nerves. Their brains in general are actually much slower at transmitting signals. They have what's known as a lower neuron density. So while their brains are very big and very heavy, and they do have more neurons than us, those neurons are further apart than ours, and that causes signals to travel slower.
The last myth question I have for you today is, elephants are slow, lumbering creatures. True or false?
False.
That's right. Elephants are very agile, despite their size. Smart kid.
And this right here is one of Opal's favorite toys. It's a ball with holes cut in it, and it's filled with carrots and other treats. And she likes to throw it around. Now, what you just saw there is one of her 3 default reactions to pretty much anything. She either throws it up on her back, she steps on it, or she puts it in her mouth. That's, no matter what it is, it's her first reaction to it. Now, you can see she's working to try and get those carrots out. This was originally developed actually for Rosie, because the idea was to use it to force her to work her trunk. However, Opal's taken a liking to it as well, so we'll give it to both of them depending on who stays back and asks for it. And you can see the reason we have to fill it with food, that's really the only way to keep an elephant interested.
Almost done, Sheriff.
Looking real sweet indeed. I'm so hungry.
Oh, changing up, huh? Oh, I'm starving. Oh, yeah. Well, interesting. Huh. Jelly. Cooked up jelly. Okay?
I forgot the peanut butter.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I appreciate it. Very nice. We're eating these jelly sandwiches. Elephants, they have a lot more unusual diet than we have.
In the wild, elephants eat pretty much all day, and so what these guys are used to is having lots of small meals throughout the day, and they'll eat. Here they're eating mostly hay. However, in the wild, their diet's a little different. Their diet consists of trees and grasses and all sorts of fun stuff like that. They eat up to 500 pounds a day of that. Now, they can eat wood. They can actually break down something called lignin and cellulose in the wood. And doing that, they can actually garner nutrition, and they're one of the only animals that can actually digest wood like that. However, it comes at a price. Their digestive system is not very efficient as a result of their ability to eat pretty much anything. Now, who can tell me what this is? Wonderful guess. Now, what is this?
Hay.
It's hay. This is their last meal, more specifically. Now, that's just how inefficient their digestive system is. That you can still see the undigested plant material in there. Now, that actually is more important than it seems, because if they're knocking down the whole tree and they're eating the branches, the leaves, the trunk, the roots, everything, what other part of the tree might they end up eating? The fruit. And what's in the fruit? Seeds. Exactly. And if it's such an inefficient digestive system, well, they're not going to break apart those seeds when they eat them. And so they are depositing those seeds as they go, and they're fertilizing them too. And so what that means is that as they go along, they might knock down trees and destroy a forest in one place, but they plant a whole new forest somewhere else. And they actually shape their entire environment because of this. And that makes them something called a keystone species, or a species that is disproportionately influential to its environment.
You know, Sheriff, all this elephant talk has been a real extravaganza.
Extravaganza. Do you know what that means?
I think so.
No, I think so isn't quite good enough. Makes a very good word of interest. Extravaganza. E-X-T-R-A-V-A-G-A-N-Z-A. Extravaganza, meaning an elaborate and spectacular entertainment or production, like elephants that perform at a circus. That would be an extravaganza. Hey, you're right. That fits.
Extravaganza? And what's all this talk about elephants? If you can't eat 'em, no point talking about 'em. Now, I'm hungry. No offense intended. And watch your step.
Well, let's see if your jelly sandwiches are an extravaganza.
Okay.
Something spectacular, I'm sure they are. Here we go.
Oh, I'm in heaven.
You didn't lick the knife, did you? Don't tell me. Here we go. Taste it. Blueberry. And preserves, too. My favorite. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank you all for coming and joining us today as well, and hope you learned a little bit more about elephants. And we'll see you all next time on the Children's Corner.
go?
We're gonna go to the children's corner.
Where do you go?
We're gonna go to the children's corner.
Tell me, where do you go?
We're gonna go to the children's corner.
Where do you go?
We're gonna go to the children's corner.
Just where do you go?